there's such vulnerability in being hopeful, I think.
Oh, that really is reverberating through my body right now. Wow.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage, right? And vulnerability to be able to say, this is going to work out. And I see what's in front of me, and this is a fucking dumpster fire. And there's another, pathway available, even if it's going to take some time.
Oh my God, Lane!
Hey, Sarah, what's going on?
I missed you in the last intro.
Oh, so sad.
I know, so sad. Scheduling, for whatever reason, we're not doing August right, and we couldn't schedule together, but it's fine. We're here now. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I missed you too.
And we've got a lot to talk about, so let's cut the shit. Let's cut the shit and get right to it. So we have a great guest today, Josie Rosario, and I'm super excited to introduce you to her. She's very magical and wonderful. But first, I'm going to tell you how to hire me because let's be honest, we're in capitalism and we all need to get paid. So if you would kindly rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that actually really does help for visibility for little small independent podcasts like ourselves. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And I don't know if that does anything, but if you like to watch videos, go for it. You get to see where my hair is at any given time. And Lane says that it looks really good today. So
It's true.
Go to YouTube if you want. I'm at Head Heart Biz Therapy. I am also at Head Heart Biz Therapy on the social medias. So Instagram is my fave place to hang. So go find me. You can also hire me for speaking gigs on all of the things around shame and power and evolving the field and being a wounded healer and all that jazz. And hire me as a consultant. If you have a group practice and you are looking to really live out your values, or there are challenges between employees and employer, I'm your gal. So hit me up, headheartbiztherapy.com. Okay, shit's out of the way. Now let's talk about this episode. I wanted to say, before I even hear what you have to say, that sounds really shitty. Do you want to talk first?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay.
It's all good.
Right. Before I hear I'm very aggressive today, obviously. And I think, honestly, when I listened back to this episode, one of the things that I think Josie and I share a certain amount of oomph in our power that can be really, I realize that it can be really off-putting and or really scary to some people, but man, does it fire me up. So I think that's why I'm a little on fire right now, because I just listened back to this conversation. So you want to go to Josie's Substack. It's substack.com at Josie Rosario, JosieRosario, and read the piece that we're talking about in there. She's got a bunch of great writing. But one of the concepts, she mentions the word collapse a couple of times in this interview. And literally just yesterday, I started listening to my new favorite book, and I hate to read, so I have to listen to all books. But I am so delighted by this book because it's about the collapse that we're in. And it is so, I don't even know how to put words. She just is hitting all of the right notes. It's so nuanced. She's talking about capitalism and power and exploitation and all of the things that have contributed to where we are right now. But she's talking about how we can live beautiful and full lives during this collapse. So it's called I Eat the Stars by Sarah Wilson. And another thing, Josie and I talked a little bit about hope in this episode and wanting to have hope. And the beginning of this book by Sarah Wilson, she articulates this so brilliantly, and I'm going to steal this and use it for the rest of my life. But if we are thinking of hope as the belief that everything's just going to turn out okay, and it's just everything's just going to be fine, and I'm just going to believe that, that's bullshit. But instead, she's really talking about hope as embracing truth and uncertainty while staying committed to meaning and action and love and beauty and all of the wonderful things about being human and not being attached to the outcome. And I'm actually on the chapter called Death right now, and I don't know where she's going to go, but she's like, we're not all going to make it. And how do we sit with that reality? And I'm like, that is the kind of shit that we need right now. And that's how I felt in this conversation with Josie. I feel like she and I are both really able to hold that uncertainty in such a particular way. And I'm just so appreciated to be connected with her in this way. What else you got?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that a little bit, it reminds me of like people saying that joy is resistance. And I think this sort of embodied and active hope that you're talking about and that Sarah Wilson was talking about is sort of the same thing. And I think it's really empowering and like truly resistant to engage in hope in that sort of way, despite or in spite of everything that's going on around us. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I love this episode. There is nothing better to me personally than like a witchy therapist. I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
I know. Well, without further ado, let me tell you about Josie Rosario. Josie Rosario is a descendant of healers and the founder of Venus Plus Legacy, a spiritually integrated therapy practice focused on relationships of two or more. She's the writer behind Josie with the Gems on Substack and mentors fellow spiritually integrated therapists and entrepreneurs navigating identity thresholds. Her work sits at the intersection of spirituality as lived practice, clinical and relational depth, and the legacies carried through relationship. So please enjoy my amazing conversation with Josie Rosario. Josie, welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you and I took a course together with Shauna Murray Brown at one point. So I remember seeing you on a screen, but other than that, we don't know each other.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. You just took me back.
Right? Yeah. To the deep in the pandemic.
Right. No, totally. I think she like had me on to come talk about like business and like strategy, something like that.
I can't remember, honestly. I think you were just a participant at that. I took it twice. So I don't know. I don't remember, but who knows? Maybe. Yeah. Well, anyway, you're here.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people a little bit about what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I split my time between writing. So I write a Substack called Josie with the Gems, and I write kind of at the intersection of relational truth, spirituality as lived practice, and always with like sprinkles of cultural commentary. So that's like 1/3 of how I use my time. Then I'm a relational therapist. So I see couples, families, partners, or business partners and friends. And then the other third of my time is spent doing mentorship work. So I work with entrepreneurs who are at identity thresholds, which is really exciting, sacred space.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, tell us your therapist origin story. Like, how did you get into this work?
I believe that we all kind of have like a calling, like it's just not one of those careers that you just like stumble upon. I mean, maybe you stumble upon it, but like, soon enough, you're like, oh, I was like meant to do this work.
Exactly.
So this is my second career. I used to be an educator and a school leader. But I always knew that I wanted to be a therapist. And, for like many different reasons, just like hadn't given myself permission to do this work. Until being in that space for like 10, 11 years totally burned me out. And yeah, I just remember one day I took a year off after that. I just remember like, laying in bed one day and being like, why am I not doing the thing that I know that I want to do, that has always just kind of like lived in me? And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going back to school. And then, ended up going back to school, and I sort of stumbled upon like couples and family work, but not really, again, because I just think that these are just things that are kind of written in the stars.
Yeah.
But yeah, ever since I was in grad school, I knew that I wanted to be a couples and family therapist, that the relational space is really where I come alive. I mean, I think about when I was an educator, the relationships that I had with my students and family was like my favorite part. Like it wasn't even like
Yeah.
the teaching. So it just all made sense. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up being a therapist.
It's so funny to hear the educator burnout to therapist pipeline, because I was a music education major for my undergrad. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, I don't know how I'm going to be with a bunch of young people when I know a lot of them are going to have problems and know that I can't help solve those problems. So like there was something in me at that time that knew, and I ended up not student teaching. So I never went into education.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was part of like the universe, like kind of, redirecting me and just being like, no, just wait until you get to grad school and then you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that you're here is because you wrote, I follow you on Instagram, and you wrote a Substack that I really enjoyed and have a lot of yes ands on it that I really wanted to like dig in with you. And I remember it was the Tower card, and I just looked it up again. Do you remember what the title was, or do you want me to grab it?
The fall of the traditional therapist.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've been talking a lot about on this podcast, specifically really starting in 2026, well, I guess before, but like really deeply in 2026, is I really am feeling the gap between the world we were trained for and the world that we have now. And that's a big part of what you were writing about. Do you want to share a little bit about what's in that piece?
I mean, I was just, talking about how the field trains us for like professional erasure and the world, the new earth, if you will, that's being birthed before us, right? Because the world is like so many things are, burning down. The collapse is here.
Yep.
And there's something else that's going to be birthed. And a lot of that is asking for mutuality, right? It is asking for community. It is asking for humanity to be at the center of everything, including mental health. And it's tricky when, even though there have been a lot of changes, we have been trained to kind of check our humanity at the door a little bit, right? And so what do you do, especially, for folks whose identity is so intertwined with being a clinician? It can get really crunchy really quickly. And so, and so the piece just kind of really goes into that. It traveled far and wide, thankfully.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, especially in the, obviously, the therapist space. A lot of folks, wrote me personally, commented. And, the piece that people just kept coming back to was the piece around, what if someone in your congregation at church is going through grief, and they come to you, what do you say? I'm going to refer you out. And like, sure, yeah, there are going to be some times where you should, right? But then, do you refer them out because you're too close to them? And how is it that now your relationality, right? How we are with each other, how is that now a liability and a risk? And that's it. We need to be thinking about that as clinicians.
Yeah. And I want to pull on a little nuance in this, because one of the things that has been surfacing a lot recently that I don't know exactly how to put my finger on just yet, but it's around therapists and their boundaries. And like you name in the piece, we needed to, like, these things needed to be put in place to protect clients, from certainly predatory therapists, but also I would say between like caretakers. I'm finding lately the way that school tries to support our professional boundaries isn't quite right, because it's really the internal work of knowing, like really being able to hold the complex experience of, I want to be here to support and help you, but I have zero effect on what your choices are. And I learned that in Al-Anon. Like I learned it in Al-Anon in a really different way than I learned in grad school. And I'm trying to sort of conceptualize how I might want to like pull some of the things that I learned from Al-Anon and adapt them to clinical work, because this just keeps coming up over and over and over again, that I see therapists really harming themselves with the way that they provide care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that you brought this up, right? Because I think that it's kind of like a dotted line to, again, this is super complex, right? But like,
Yeah.
it's a dotted line to like another piece of this, which is, and I've been really vocal about this for a really long time, even before this piece, is around therapists doing their own work, right?
Yes.
And
Woo!
the
The angels
don't,
began singing.
right? Like therapists just, actually, I'm not gonna include myself in there, but like, you know, therapists are notorious for this like blind leading the blind situation, right? And the savior complexes and the, you know, like you have to have such deep integrity.
Yes.
And because people don't, right? And you know, it's not like a character judgment or like a commentary on who they are. Like,
Right.
people are going to do people things. But because that always isn't in place, then it's just entirely too easy to be harmful, right? Even when that is the very last thing that you want to do. And so, you know, I mean, I've written about this even like, again, outside of this piece, and always telling people who are looking for therapists, it's like, you need to ask therapists that. We need to get better at asking therapists questions because, yeah, like, you know, you don't have to ask a therapist, like, tell me about what you are working on personally. That's none of your business. But, you know, you should be able to get a sense of how a person that might be helping you through some hard things, how they interact with their own personal work. Like, that's important for you to know. So,
Right.
so yeah, I think that those two things are very much connected.
100. I mean, this is the reason the podcast exists, because when I got into the field, I assumed I was going to be amongst people who were deeply committed to doing their work.
Same.
And I continue to bump my head against the wall when I find people who aren't. I was at a conference not too long ago. Shauna Murray Brown was there, actually, psychotherapy networker. And I was in a breakout session that I really, really loved. It was a woman who is also, she's a therapist and a pastor. I need to look up her last name again. She's going to be on the podcast at some point, you guys. Her name is also Sarah. I really enjoyed it. And as she was talking about integrating spirituality into the therapy room, there are all these models for how to do that. And I couldn't help but think, well, why aren't there models for how to put politics in the therapy room? And so like I brought that out, and then the therapist started getting a little like, whoa. And one person was like, yeah, a client called me and they had all these questions for me. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to answer that. And the whole room, I know, the whole room started kind of echoing that same thing. Like, yeah, I'm not going to answer those questions because what does that have to do with anything? And I said, you guys, exactly. And I said, I hear what you all are saying, and we're in a new time. This is a new time that calls for new ways to relate to these people. Authenticity is something people are absolutely starving for right now because we've had social media, like whatever glossy shit is out there that's not necessarily real. People want to know what's real. And oh my God, like if I actually had a woman, Jamie Merritt, on the podcast not too long ago, and we talked about creating your therapy CV. So essentially, like writing down all of the healing work that you've done. And there's no way I could remember all of the stuff that I've done, but I thought that was such a beautiful way to think about what actually qualifies us for the work. And yes, learning is important. Evidence-based practice has its place. But I am 100% with you that our own personal healing is second to none.
That is absolutely. I mean, I think there's a direct line between that and effectiveness, right? Which is a whole other conversation in the field. Like, no one is talking about who's effective or not, which is its own problem. But 100%, I always say, when I used to, was doing more like business coaching for therapists, I would always tell the therapists that I worked with, like, your best client is a former version of you, That's who your best client is.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with your credentials. It is about, if you cannot walk this person down a path that you've at least been down once, and you know that there's a pebble here and there's a boulder there and there's a rock there, what are you doing? And so if you are even unintentionally leaving out your lived experience, you're not owning that. Again, you don't have to go into details, but there's a way in which you can talk about the work and who you serve and what kind of challenges you're best able to support in a way that someone says, oh, she gets it, they get it, right? Without divulging all of that. And yeah, it's just like my hope that, again, therapists just kind of like take off the mask, right? Which is kind of what you're alluding to here in the conference of like, well, I'm not going to answer that. Like, how elitist is that? How ivory tower-ish is that? How is that? Like, that is so othering, that creates disconnection, which, again, I think it worked at a different time, to your point. Yeah, there's going to be a certain generation, a certain group of therapists that are going to struggle immensely in the next few years. And so if you are listening, y'all need to get it together.
Right. I'm hoping that the people listening to this are probably already on our side. But actually, you know what? No, I hope people that want to argue with me. I don't get enough. I shouldn't speak this into existence, but I don't get any pushback. And it's probably just because people who don't like it don't listen to this kind of stuff. But what would be your hypotheses around what gets in the way of therapists doing their own work?
The vulnerability, right? Like, how are you in a position of power? Because our work is, right, like we are in positions of like expertise, right? How are you in this position? And then how does that coexist with, like, you still have work to do, right? Like going back to like the integrity and really humility and this warped idea, which is, again, dotted line to patriarchy, but like this warped idea of like a position of power, which is really about leadership. And so if we take in this inherited but wrong, in my opinion, position of like leadership and of power, then that is kind of in direct contradiction to like, well, I'm a work in progress and will forever be a work in progress. I might still be on the journey, but I'm a couple of steps ahead of you, so I can offer some insight, but I'm still on the journey with you. Like that idea I don't think it matches with what I think most people think about this role and this field and the work. And I mean, you can go to social media and look through comments of like, let's say the most recent scandal in the therapy space is this personality is really what I'm going to call her. There's this woman, she goes by Dr. whatever her name is, but she has like a doctorate. She was never licensed. She's not really a mental health professional, but I think that's how she portrayed herself.
She wasn't.
Never licensed. It's all PR, but pretty much what she's saying is like, well, I'm not practicing under a license anymore. But again, she never had one. Now I'm moving into, she doesn't mention coaching, but that is what she's essentially doing. And you see like, I mean, this is like blown up on social media, especially on Threads. And you see the comments of the therapist, and you could just see you can hear obviously the rage, which is I think warranted, but you can also see this position of like, we should know better, like this almost position of like perfection. And I'm just like, this is in part what's the matter here, is that we really need to redefine what it means to be a therapist, to be someone who walks with people down this path. And you really need to face your own ideas of power and proximity to power and whiteness and again, patriarchy. Like, we can kind of take this, along all the rungs in the bullseye, but I think that's part of what gets in the way. It's this like dissonance between like, I'm a therapist, but like, how can I be a mess? That actually makes you a better therapist, in my opinion, but maybe that's a different conversation.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I could not do this work if I hadn't been engaged in my own healing and had a point where I was an absolute fucking mess, barely able to put one foot in front of the other. And now I'm not that. And it's because of really digging in and being with my trauma and having dark nights of the soul and finding my own spirituality, right? Like all of these pieces. And I also think what's important too, particularly about this time, is we're going through the exact same trauma as our clients. You know, this is the first time, at least in our lifetime, really, that we have this global disruption on many fronts. Like the word metacrisis is the term that I've been using, right? Because it's all these, not just individual crises, but compounding with each other to create this, you know, fuck storm that we have now. And I think you're right. Like, there's something, this is all an invitation for something new to be birthed, to come forward. And I mean, sorry, white people, but I think white people are particularly really challenged at dreaming up something new. And part of it, I think, is being controlled by patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism, right? All of these things sort of keeping our ability to think outside the box, like, really squished down. And it's funny, like, I find myself scaring the shit out of a lot of people because I'm like, yep, collapsing. What's next? Let's fucking build what's next. And it's really, I'm sure you find the same. It's really, really hard to like maintain that hope in the face of everybody just freaking the fuck out right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, you know, like the death and rebirth cycle, right? And how that is just so crucial to living, right? And being in your purpose. And you know, if you understand that and you allow yourself to go through that, then you're going to end up growing and learning and etc. But I find that a lot of times when people, you know, really struggle with, you know, this that you're saying here, you know, they struggle with like that letting go. It's this like intolerance maybe of like going through the cycle, but this is the only way forward. I mean, it's part of the way forward. And you know, I mean, you probably know this, like how many folks are like really struggle with like letting go.
Yes.
Right. And again, I go back to what I was saying before about folks' identities and values being so enmeshed with this role, like, because what you're saying, like, guys, yeah, this thing is going to collapse and something else is going to be reborn. I mean, like, if we extrapolate that, what that means is that your identity and where you get a lot of validation, like, that is changing. That is going to reorganize you. And people know what the shits. They're like, nah, I don't want to do that. This has been good to me. This has rewarded me. I know this, right? And so, again, have a ton of empathy, you know, because all of that makes sense to some degree. And also, this moment is asking a certain thing of us, right?
Yeah.
Yes, professionally, but it's always a dotted line to me, to your personal stuff as well.
Yeah. What house is Aquarius in your chart?
Aquarius is in my third house of communication.
Okay. Yeah. It's my fourth house, but my sun, Mercury, and Mars are in a stellium together.
In Aquarius.
Okay.
Totally understand like that, like the work that you do. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny that like both the Enneagram and astrology have really helped me better empathize actually with people, because fear, I think I have a different relationship with fear. Even when I feel fear, I'm going to fucking do the shit anyway, because that is just how I'm wired. And I've had a real intolerance for people's fear. And so in learning some of these other like ways of how humans can be, it helps me put myself in somebody else's shoes to be a little bit more compassionate for that fear, when it's not, again, something that like I can't really lead you through your fear. All I can do is try to inspire you to come to the other side.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, you are 100% speaking my language. Astrology for me in particular, I mean, it's like it's at the center of my practice. Like, instead of intakes, I do birth chart readings.
Stop.
Mhm.
Teach me everything. I love it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I am putting the methodology, the framework is 100% coming
Are
together,
you?
but
I will absolutely sign up for your course. Yes.
it is absolutely like life changing. Like the way in which, right, and I'm already, like deeply intuitive, right? Like, so like, I just like see a chart and it's like, okay, I see how the things are happening. I understand like why you're saying what you're saying. And then, obviously you add transits on top of that and it makes for a really rich, um, picture. But yeah, I hear you on the fear. But again, like, I think this is just like a deeper conversation around people's relationship with their own personal development, right? Like, yes, fear is going to happen, but if you don't have a relationship to your fear, like the thing is going to drive the car being you, right? In your
Right.
nervous system. And then what? And so I hear you on the intolerance. I've always been very intolerant, like for better, for worse. I think I'm just like a lot nicer about it now, a lot kinder.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just, how do I say this? It's not that I haven't had the privilege of feeling fear. It's more so that, I've used it to really fuel me
Yeah.
in certain ways. And, it's less of like, well, why can't you do that? Like, I would never tell someone that, but it
Right.
is a little bit of an intolerance. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, well, what is going to happen here with this? Because feel the thing, but the thing is not facts. So
Yeah, something else like really nuanced about this, because all of my clients are therapists, and so it's really great to be able to like get to the like really fine stuff sometimes. And obviously I won't tell the details, but a client yesterday, we were sort of talking about the mechanism of hope and faith, and the like my propensity is always to it's going to work out. Like I got a very happy Jupiter, and things do
Mhm.
tend to work out for me. So I also have a history of, positive things working. And, her constellation of many things puts her in a position to be more pessimistic. And I
Mm.
was really like, I was again, like, because that's not my experience, I was really trying to like put myself in that seat. And I also have a couple of close relationships right now where they also seem to have that same like bent towards pessimism. And I find it fascinating that we are really wired differently,
Mm.
because even through all of the shit I've been through, I always had a like this is going to work out. And I'm curious your relationship to hope and faith too.
You know, it's so interesting you say that about like the pessimism because there's such vulnerability in being hopeful, I think.
Oh, that really is reverberating through my body right now. Wow.
Yeah,
Shit.
it takes a lot of courage, right? And vulnerability to be able to say, this is going to work out. And I see what's in front of me, and this is a fucking dumpster fire. And there's another like pathway available, even if it's going to take some time, And so, yes, we are wired differently. But, when you were saying that, and I don't know if this is like me and my therapist had, but it's like, well, what role does pessimism play, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do we benefit from that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, for me, I'm a Libra sun, so I
Libra
am,
rising.
uh, I'm like wildly optimistic and the peacemaker, and better for worse.
Right.
um, like very optimistic. Like it has to work out. It has to, right?
Yeah.
Whether the working out is something that I can conceptualize right now, but I just, yeah. And obviously, like my faith has a lot to do with that. There's always just options. There's always options. And, someone who comes from like a legacy of, like poverty and marginalization, right? I am keenly aware that one of the first things that happens, right, is like we forget that we have options when we're constantly in survival mode, right? And so for me, it's almost like, it's like a duty to be hopeful because it's almost like a rejection of this thing,
Yeah.
you know, it's a rejection of the optimism that I think that these circumstances have like taken away from like my lineage, for example. So yeah, for me, hope is front and center. Even if I don't know how it's gonna work out, it is going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah, in my therapy session earlier today, my own therapy, I was remarking on, like, a really, really painful, like, kind of ego death, soul awakening process that I went through at the time. I was not at all grateful, and now I look back at that initiation of sorts and think, "Wow, I am incredibly grateful that that happened and that I, you know, made certain choices that put me in that position." So, yeah, that's it really I had an embodied response to that idea of hope being so vulnerable, and I mean, I think one of the things that has saved my life is um, my for lack of a better I can't not be vulnerable. Like,
Mm,
I so desperately wanted to be seen
mm,
growing up and was never seen, and so I'm like, "I really wanna show you all of me because I want someone to love me." And it's shifted a lot now because I feel a lot more at home in my own self, but I see people struggle with vulnerability, and again, I'm sort of like, "Why? This is the best thing because you get to be your full self, and then when people love you, they're loving you. They're not loving some facade that you're putting out there."
yeah, yeah. That's I mean, I also you know, the same way when it comes to, you know, being vulnerable and being me and you know, just like being really authentic, you know, but I'm curious, did you always feel like you were lovable?
No,
Yeah.
definitely not. No, it really wasn't until, like, the past couple years after a really big piece of trauma healing work that I kind of I describe it sort of as, like, I was always, like, swimming in shame and,
Mm,
like, trying to like Sisyphus, like, pushing the boulder up the hill, but
mm,
I got it over, and now
yeah.
it's over here, and it's still there, but it's not I'm not constantly trying to, like, get over it anymore. I really now deeply trust how lovable and special and wonderful I am, and I love when I'm connected to other people who like, I would love and I talked about this fairly recently on the podcast too, I would love if we had a world where we really could celebrate how amazing we are, rather than having to apologize, you
Yeah,
know? Like, my husband always laughs at me because, like, I'm a really fucking good singer, and I am never going to say that I'm not because I am.
I love that.
It's an objective truth, and he's like, "Oh, you're so humble." I'm like, "But why do like, you're great at
Sure.
XYZ. You're great at X," and it doesn't take away from anybody else to be like, fully proud of oneself. In a and that, like, makes me think of capitalism, right? Because capitalism is breeding this scarcity, and there's only certain people who can do certain things, and we're all competing for a finite amount of resources. But when that resource is love and self-worth, I'm not playing your fucking game.
And that's exactly it. And part of why I asked the question, right? It's that, you know, a lot of folks haven't gotten the boulder over, right? And
Right.
100% gets in the way of like showing up as is. Like it's so crazy we're talking about this because I'm actually writing a piece right now for Substack around you know my own story, like owning
Mm.
who I am. And you know, I've always been like kind of what you see, which is what you get. I've always been really authentic, but there was even some like hiding within that authenticity, right? Where I couldn't
Mhm.
really be
Yes.
like all of me all the
Yes.
time, right? And how like really kind of going down, like really exploring my chart, you know, I've come to realize how I am like a projection magnet. That's what I've been called, right? Like I
Mm.
just attract people who like very easily like project stuff onto me that, you know, again, kind of gets in the way of like really showing up, like really authentic. And, obviously as a therapist, I think that works really well. I think that that's part of the work, right? Like if I, help you bring the things that are in the shadows out, then great. Like that is part of the work. But like what happens in your amorous relationships, what happens in your friendships, right? Where, when you show up in your fullness, people then end up having these really strong reactions. And then like, what do you do with that? Like, do you hide? Do you then perform? Do you whatever? So it's just so crazy that you like are mentioning this when I'm
I don't know. I would love to do our chart synastry and see, right? Like, it's very clear. I love finding people who are thinking about and talking about and living in the things that I am living in. And it also, speaking of hope, that gives me hope that there are more of us than I think there are.
Oh, Sarah, let me tell you, Sarah. There are a lot of us out there, but we're, again, not me necessarily, but folks are in hiding. Yeah. They're in hiding. And that makes sense given like all of the things that we've spoken about here, the collapse, the what if, the systems, all the isms, like all of it. But there's so many, like I hate using the term kind of coming out, but I've let people into my world as like a fully like spiritually integrated therapist. Like it's not an add-on. Like you can't come and want to work with me and like we are gonna do astrology. Like I am gonna use that to understand. We are gonna do some tarot pulls. If you have a benevolent ancestor that shows up in session, I am going to tell you, you know what I mean? Like that is just like, you have to be okay with that. But since I have really let people into my world and, I've built my practice completely around this, the number of like therapists that I have met that are like really with the shits, that are really about this work, that are just like, I do this kind of like on the low. I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many of us. And kind of going back to what you were saying about hope, like I understand the context and why folks are maybe hiding or, or doing their own thing. But I have so much hope that, as I said in my Substack piece, that we are kind of going back to this like version of the village healer, that obviously is not going to look the exact same way of like a different time. But that, it is like this village healer persona that, isn't again on like an ivory tower somewhere like above us or like better, than the people and the collective,
Right. Well, that begs the question, are you a healer, Josie?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I know people get really weird around that term.
They do.
And I am just like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, again, going back to like integrity, I 100% don't believe I give healing to other people. It's just I create the conditions for people to like come to it on their own. But yeah, I 100% resonate with that term. And I know that some folks have not used it well, but that has nothing to do with me, right? Like,
damn straight.
That's them and that sucks for them. But, we can't cancel a term just because some people have bastardized it, really.
Yeah. Well, how about wounded healer? How does that sit with you?
Yes. Again, right? Yeah. Like, I am best able to support people, right, that are like on the same journey, right? Or different, maybe in the earlier part of my journey. So like, I own my wounds like 100%, I'm really big on self-disclosure in sessions. Like I locate myself like on the initial like consultation call, like, obviously everything has to be within reason and it has to make sense, right? But again, like I like to meet people in their humanity, right? So that means that I have to show up in mine. And if that sometimes mean when it's clinically appropriate to tell someone like, I have an abandonment wound and this is how
Yeah.
it showed up, and this is how I'm able to have a relationship with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not,
Mhm.
I'm not doing mental gymnastics around being wounded. Like, that's actually part of what makes me such a good clinician. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about it. That's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wish that we could just literally keep talking all
Yeah.
day because we clearly just have so I am so grateful that you said yes to this podcast and that we get to be in shared space and we get to put your voice out in the world. Yeah, this is not going to be the last time you and I talk.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure.
tell people where they can find you.
I am redefining my relationship with Instagram. So
Good for you.
TBD on that. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the Josie Rosario, or on Substack, Josie with the Gems, or if you just search for Josie Rosario, I'll pop up. And then, on my website, if it's for like therapy, or, you're a therapist and you're looking for support, if you're like a spiritually integrated therapist, that's venusandlegacy.com. And then for more of the mentorship, my personal brand website, it's josierosario.com. So
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I'm excited to continue our relationship in one way or another.
yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.